Mr. Speaker, the education sector. The education sector strategy will be guided by Global Education 2030 Agenda and targets, defined by Sustainable Development Goal 4, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education for all and promote lifelong learning. The broad sector policy thrust for education is sustainable and efficient management of education service delivery will focus on teacher development and accountability, improve quality of teaching and learning at all levels, inclusive and equitable access to at all levels, skills development and training for employability through quality TVET, and strengthen mathematics, science, ICT, and technology education. Basic education curriculum reforms. To improve the quality of basic education and equip the Ghanaian child with basic literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking skills, the Ministry of Education commenced the process for the review of the basic level curriculum to emphasize the 4 R's of reading, writing, arithmetic, and creativity. In 2018, the Ministry will complete the curriculum reforms and define national pupil standards in literacy, numeracy, and creativity. In addition, the Common National Assessment System will be implemented to measure pupil achievements against set benchmarks. In accordance with Education Act 778, government is implementing measures to ensure continuous professional development of teachers through registration and licensing of teachers under the pre-tertiary Teacher Professional Development and Management Scheme. The pre-tertiary bill approved by Cabinet proposes the devolution of the management of basic schools to the assemblies and management of senior high schools at Ghana Education Service and Ministry of Education headquarters. In 2018, the bill will be laid before Parliament. The number of basic schools, both public and private, increased at all levels. KGs increased by 5.4%, primary 5.4%, and junior high school 7% between 2015 and 2016, and 2016 and 2017 academic years. Capitation grant. In fulfillment of government's promise to make basic education free and ensure participation by all, the capitation grant was increased by 100% from 4 cedis 50 pesos per capita to 9 cedis in 2017. Mr. Speaker, it is worth stressing that this increase by the Akufo-Addo government was the first ever increase in the capitation grant since 2009. Meaning, in all the 8 years that our dear friends, our social democrats, were in office, I'm happy to further announce that there will be a further increase to 10 cedis in 2018 under this government. BEC subsidy. Government absorbed 70% of the 2017 BEC registration fees as subsidies for all registered candidates in both public and private JHS. In 2018, government will absorb 100% BEC registration fees for registered candidates from public junior high schools. The ministry will next year begin the infrastructural works towards the introduction of the basic science, technology, engineering, and mathematics (BSTEM) program in all basic schools. This initiative is intended to strengthen the foundational skills and generate interest in mathematics, science, and technology. This will involve the provision of equipment to over 38,000 public basic schools, training over 38,000 basic school teachers in the delivery of BSTEM, and the establishment of 10 well-equipped regional BSTEM centers. TVET reforms to the alignment of public TVET institutions under the Ministry of Education will continue in 2018. The reforms will include developing occupational standards, training of facilitators and assessors, and strengthening competency-based training. Teacher training allowance. Government restored the teacher training allowance covering over 49,000 teacher trainees from 41 public colleges of education for 2017-2018. In addition, funds were released for the payment of outstanding feeding grants to all public colleges of education for the 2015 and 2017 academic year. In the 2018-2019 year, a projected number of over 52,000 teacher trainees will benefit from the allowances. A report was submitted for the enactment of a law to establish a unified commission for tertiary education to deal with policy formulation, implementation, and accreditation, among others. In 2018, the Ministry will begin implementing recommendations that will reform university accreditation and affiliation policies towards introducing equity and fairness in the setting up of public and private universities. Health. Government paid $600 million out of the total government indebtedness to National Health Insurance Scheme, and this has improved funding and smooth running of hospitals. In line with government's commitment to revive NHIS, the ministry set up technical teams to review recommendations of the NHIS review report. In the area of infrastructure, construction of classroom blocks for health training institutions at Sampa, Asankrangwa, Pantang, and Kolobu Critical Care and Peri-Operative Unit was completed in 2017. The following projects are also at various stages of completion: 4 district hospitals, namely Kumau, Fomena, Abetifi, and Takrady European Hospital; Tamale Teaching Hospital Phase 2, 2 regional and 6 district hospitals at Wa, Sewa, Salaga, Konongo, Tepa, Nkoko, Atomic, and Chufuprasu; 10 polyclinics at Bisiasi, Gomoa, Darampong, Bimpong, Eja, Ekumfi, Nakwa, Esisunkwa, Brewa, Ekumfudi, Drama, Mankrong, and Poston, all in the central region; 5 polyclinics at Oduman, Sege, Botiano, Ashiaman, and Adenta in the Greater Accra region. The number of institutional material maternal deaths per 100,000 live births reduced from 167.5 in June 2016 to 149.7 in June 2017. However, institutional infant mortality per 1,000 births increased from 5.8 to 7.5. Mr. Speaker, sector challenges affected the purchase of vaccines, resulting in lower than targeted immunization coverage in the first half of 2017. In 2018, the Ministry will continue to address the vaccines challenges that the country has faced over the last 8 years and develop a clear, sustainable plan for vaccines, antiretroviral medicines, in anticipation of our exit from Gavi. Mr. Speaker, the focus of health sector activities in 2018 will be directed at reducing morbidity and mortality, especially maternal and neonatal, and improving the quality of life. This will be achieved by increasing access to quality health services and improving efficiency in the governance and management of the health delivery system. In 2018, government will explore the possibility of weaning selected health agencies of government subvention. In addition, the ministry, in collaboration with other stakeholders, will develop medical tourism policy. Mr. Speaker, in the fight against corruption, the Office of Special Prosecutors Bill was just yesterday passed by this august House. This is a significant move in the overwhelming national desire to combat corruption. In 2018, The Office of the Attorney General's Department will operationalize the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Review all agreements for MDAs and MMDAs with the aim to secure successful convictions in the vast majority of cases referred to the office by the police. Mr. Speaker, at the heart of our government's vision for Ghana is Ghana Beyond Aid. We are committed to pursuing this agenda for inclusive growth by implementing strategies, policies, and programs to grow our economy and promote the creation of good jobs at a much faster pace than ever before. Mr. Speaker, to this end, we envision a Ghana Beyond Aid, where government and the people of Ghana take full ownership and responsibility for the nation's economic growth and transformation in a new partnership with our development partners. Mr. Speaker, while we greatly appreciate and will continue to welcome assistance from our external development partners, we envisage a new partnership where development assistance is targeted and strategically aligned with our national growth and economic transformation priorities, where domestic resource mobilization is enhanced through higher private savings and higher government revenues raised in a more efficient and equitable manner, where there is resolute efficiency and accountability in the use of all public resources by government, including resources from external partners, where strong support is given to the private sector, both domestic and foreign, to drive economic growth and job creation, and where our engagement with external partners transitions from one based on aid to one increasingly based on trade and strategic political cooperation. Mr. Speaker, we envision a Ghana Beyond Aid where within a generation, Ghana, through rapid and inclusive growth that respects gender equity, safeguards the environment, and mitigates climate risk exposure, has attained upper middle income status. This will be a Ghana where each child has the opportunity to graduate from at least a senior secondary school or polytechnic and be equipped with the skills to succeed in the modern workplace. A Ghana of an economy based on transformed and highly productive agriculture, a dynamic and competitive manufacturing sector, and high-value services that provide productive employment opportunities for all our young people entering the job market. A Ghana where no one has to go hungry and everyone has access to the necessities of life, including good health care, water, and sanitation in line with the SDG goals. A Ghana that provides reliable and affordable supply of infrastructure, especially power. A Ghana that is a hub for manufacturing, airline services, financial services, education, health, and other high-value modern services. A Ghana that is the preferred location for international businesses that are operating in mutually beneficial linkages with vibrant local businesses and servicing the rest of Africa and the global market. Mr. Speaker, we can do this and we will do this. Mr. Speaker, I have every confidence that of all of us working together under the President's leadership, we can march forward to a Ghana Beyond Aid in a new, more mature and mutually beneficial relationships with everyone and advance towards our national vision of building an optimistic, self-confident society. About 4,000 national service personnel will be engaged to to emboss digital addresses on all landed properties nationwide. 4,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker, will be created in this area. National Identification Program. Mr. Speaker, after 8 long years of inaction, the National Identification Program was revived, and on 15 September 2017, the first Ghana card was issued to His Excellency the President. The National Identification Authority will commence issuing the Ghana card after the amendment of the National Identification Authority Act 2006, Act 707, and subsequent passage of the relevant legislative instrument. It will be the first ever multi-purpose card issued in Ghana to support government's efforts of formalizing the economy. Care is being taken to ensure coordination with all other related identification initiatives to prevent waste of resources and maximize government's investment. Mr. Speaker, measures were put in place to strengthen commitment controls and ensure that expenditures match revenue inflows to sanitize public expenditure management. Government is committed to enforcing the PFM Act to this end. Draft regulations to operationalize PFM are being finalized and will be presented to this August House in 2018. Mr. Speaker, the next phase of the TSA implementation will be to extend the transfer of Government of Ghana's bank accounts of commercial banks to cover donor funds of MDAs, as well as the bank accounts of subvented agencies, such as universities and other institutions. This will be an important step for consideration in view of managing government's cash position efficiently. Mr. Speaker, a maiden 15-year domestic bond was issued to lengthen the maturity profile of public debt. The domestic debt reprofile necessary which contributed to improving the debt mix and lower domestic interest payments will be continued. And the next phase of the liability management program will include external debt reprofiling based on market conditions, issuance of Eurobonds and use of some of the proceeds for reprofiling more expensive domestic debt, creation of benchmark domestic bonds through tap-ins rather than new issuance. This will improve secondary market trading, improving liquidity and reducing yields on the domestic market, exploring the opportunity to deepen domestic market by making domestic bond more tradable on the international market. Mr. Speaker, as we are all aware, a major source of corruption has been with malfeasance in public procurement and extensive human interface in the provision of public services. In this regard, a number of major interventions have been undertaken, including but not limited to the following: enhanced oversight responsibility for public procurement with appointment of a Minister of State for Public Procurement, the introduction of e-procurement by the Public Procurement Authority, implementation of a paperless system at ports, implementation of smart vehicle registration and driver's license by DVLA, enhanced investigation of corruption in the public service by the Office of the Auditor General, IOCO, National Security, and other state investigative institutions. Methodical and thorough investigations are being conducted to avoid claims of witch hunting. The Office of the Special Prosecutor is getting ready to crack the whip of justice. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure development and job creation. Mr. Speaker, the Akufo-Addo program for economic transportation is a three-pronged economic development program that would accelerate investments in agriculture, strategic infrastructure, and industrialization. Under the program, we will modernize agriculture, improve production efficiency, achieve food security, and increase profitability for our farmers. The plan is to invest in the entire agriculture and agribusiness value chain, which will create new businesses and job opportunities in the sector. Mr. Speaker, government will also invest in infrastructure that supports the opening up of the major agricultural zones of the country, in energy and related infrastructure to accelerate the industrialization agenda of government. Significant investments will be made in the road and rail sectors of the economy to facilitate trade and the investment of goods and people. The Akufo-Addo program for economic transportation will abolish duties on some agricultural produce, processing equipment, and machinery, support the development of agribusiness startups, provide a 400 million fund to de-risk agriculture and agribusiness sector through sustainable agricultural financing and crop insurance schemes, provide 400 million fund to de-risk agriculture, increase the pace of agricultural mechanization, provide specific technical assistance and tax incentives to support agro-processing, packaging, and market assets, launch a major pension scheme for cocoa farmers, ramp up investments under the Planting for Food and Jobs, develop modern storage facilities through the One District, One Warehouse program, implement a grant funding facility for agribusiness startups, launch the commodities exchange, and open up key food basket loans through road construction and irrigation projects. Over the next 3 years, the following roads and bridges will be constructed. Arian Kwanta of Wase, Ninahen Awiseso, Ninahen Tertiary, Esuponi Rails, Ekutuase, Kaduase, Akuase, Kasotie Junction, Bulugu Basenkuwa, Laura Hantumu, Nandong Hamele, Tamale Karaga, Karaga Kushiegu, Bumbrugu, Narego, Jupu Praso, Dunka Onofen, Ekoko New Abring, Fuase, Akomodan, Elugu Asempro Enchi, Asempro Madiambra, Nanakro Futo, Aquacro Mamisano, Avekokoi, Tamale Solaga, Manta Damango, Tamale 0.7 interchange, Swami interchange, PTC interchange, Agoya Bridge, Yape Bridge, Wape Bridge, Laura Dekwe Bridge, Primamiswa Bridge, and 99. And, Mr. Speaker, 99 steel bridges. Mr. Speaker, 99 steel bridges. Mr. Speaker, in line with our public investment management policy, we will develop the public investment management reform strategy and action plan and establish a functional public investment management system. In furtherance of this, government will enhance the role of the private sector in the provision of infrastructure through PPPs. A new PPP bill has been prepared and will be submitted to Cabinet for approval, and once passed by Parliament, it will be followed by the relevant regulations. In the interim, government has attracted investor interest in the rail sector. The Western Rail Line Takoradi to Kumasi, the Eastern Rail Line Accra to Kumasi, the Central Rail Line Kumasi to Paga, Accra City Rail, Kumasi City Rail, Ouagadougou Multi-Purpose Dam and Solar Hybrid Project, Accra Kumasi Highway, Volta Lake Transportation Project. Mr. Speaker, an integrated bauxite and aluminium development project with aluminium refineries at Ninahin and Chebi. Mr. Speaker, we are introducing a Nation Builders Corps. A Nation Builders Corps. Mr. Speaker, the most critical economic problem of our time is youth unemployment, and in particular, graduate unemployment. Available data from ISA in March 2017 revealed that only 10% of graduates find jobs after their national service, and it can take up to 10 years for a large number of graduates to secure employment. This is due to varied challenges that range from the lack of employable skills, unavailability of funding capital for entrepreneurship, as well as low capacity of industry to absorb the huge numbers. We must, Mr. Speaker, reverse this trend. Mr. Speaker, we note that several institutions, several transition programs run under the various government institutions and agencies, including the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, the National Vocational and Technical Institute, Council for Technical and Vocational Education and Training, COTVET, Youth Enterprises Support, and the Youth Employment Authority have targeted non-tertiary graduates. With this background, our government is proposing a new jobs program, the Nation Builders Corps, to focus on graduate unemployment. The Nation Builders Corps program will be a major government initiative to address livelihood empowerment and graduate unemployment to solve economic and social problems. The focus of the initiative will be solving public service delivery in health, education, agriculture, sanitation, and drive revenue mobilization and collection at GRA. The objective of this program will be to provide employment, improve skills and employability, improve public service delivery, improve government revenue mobilization. Under the Nation's Builders Corps program, graduates will be trained, equipped with the necessary work tools, and deployed around the country to be engaged as graduate teachers in a Teach Ghana program focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and other relevant subjects in primary and secondary schools across the country. Sanitation inspectors in a Clean Ghana program focused on enforcing sanitation laws and inspection to ensure clean communities. Trained nurses and other healthcare workers in a Heal Ghana program that will provide healthcare delivery to deprived and rural communities across Ghana. Trained agriculture, extension, and other allied workers in a Feed Ghana program that will provide extensive support to farmers across agricultural value chains. Tertiary graduates in a Revenue Ghana program will mobilize the youth to collect taxes that have been difficult to mobilize and enforce collection for the development of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, the Nation Builders Corps program will hire 100,000 graduates in 2018. To be 100,000 graduates in 2018. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we are confronted, Mr. Speaker, with only 10% of our graduates finding jobs, and it taking sometimes over 10 years for them to be placed in secure employment. Mr. Speaker, the Nation Builders Corps will make a significant dent in hiring 100,000 graduates in 2018 to be posted in these various areas. It will be housed under the Office of the President as a special initiative. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, our faith-based organizations of all religions are a significant part of our economic and social construct. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, across the length and breadth of our country, our faith-based institutions have more than 30,000 branch network. They have more visible presence than any state institution. Every hamlet has a faith-based institution of one form or the other. It is our considered view, Mr. Speaker, that engaging the faith-based institutions in viable economic ventures, teaming up the faith-based institutions with the business community and government to create economic ventures will be an effective way to expedite business development and job creation, especially for the youth. Mr. Speaker, faith-based institutions have the most effective transmission mechanism to reach into every corner of our society, and it is unfortunate that government has not taken time to come into a partnership with them to deliver critical social services in education, health and water, but also to support provision of skills. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Minister,
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, consistent. Mr. Speaker, improving domestic revenue mobilization. Mr. Speaker, consistent with government's objective of ensuring fiscal consolidation without compromising growth, as well as our resolve to consolidate our lower middle income status and move towards middle income status, and eventually wean ourselves from donor dependency, the need to significantly improve our domestic resource mobilization has become imperative. There's therefore the need to reverse the flat trend on tax to GDP ratios in the last few years. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, we will keep a balance across all sources of revenue and improve burden sharing across taxpayers using the most equitable and efficient administrative procedure and make the tax system more transparent and fair. Against the background, government will embark on the following measures to improve domestic resource mobilization. Create fiscal space by reducing budget rigidities. In this light, earmark funds capping realignment act that was passed last year to free resources for priority programs. Broaden the tax base to rope in more taxpayers into the tax net. The implementation of the national ID will be helpful. Improve tax compliance through the review of suspense regimes, special orders, use of fiscal electronic devices, implementation of the excise tax stamps, and the implementation of common reporting standard for exchange of information, among others. Strengthen the design and administration of property taxes, rationalize taxation of the mining sector. We intend to preserve without tackling discretionary. Examine, Mr. Speaker, order. Examine the design of our VAT systems and address any significant policy shortcomings that might be identified. Overhaul Mr. Speaker, overhaul the exemption system to curtail large revenue losses which occur due to special regimes, reduced tax rates, and other exemptions which do not serve social or economic purpose and are exploited by insiders. Mr. Speaker, as these policy changes require careful study and preparations, we plan to come back to this august House in the course of 28 to make additional proposals, to make the requisite proposals for enactment of the appropriate laws to pave way for implementation. Mr. Speaker, government strategy to shift the focus of economic policy from taxation to production must necessarily come with greater need to broaden the tax base and ensure compliance. That's the only way to spread the national tax burden evenly across the population and lessen the tax burden on compliant taxpayers. Accordingly, in 2018, the following tax compliance measures, among others, will be applied with greater urgency. Reform of the customs suspense and transit regimes. The customs suspense regime permits importers to suspend payment of import duties because the imports are to be kept in bonded warehouses. There is evidence that these trade facilitation arrangements are being abused. To remedy this and reduce the risk to revenue, importers will be required to submit letters of credit, guarantees, or insurance cover from participating accredited financial institutions before their goods are warehoused. The duties paid on goods removed from the warehouses will be set off against the financial instrument. Further to this new policy, current defaulters will be required to settle all the arrears, including penalties, before they will be permitted to warehouse additional goods. The transit regime permits the clearing of transit goods without payment of duty. Modalities will be developed to ensure that transit importers pay the duties on imports in Ghana, which will be transferred to the designated destination country. Deployment of fiscal electronic device. The frequent audit of businesses has been a source of concern for the business community. In response to these concerns, government in 2018 will deploy fiscal electronic device to VAT-registered businesses. This will have the effect of VAT compliance and record keeping. Improving property tax collection. The Constitution enjoins MMDAs, Mr. Speaker, to mobilize revenue for provision of services. A major source of revenue is property tax, collection of which is low due to insufficient valuation capacity and the high cost of valuation. To enhance efficiency both in the evaluation of properties and revenue collection process from this source. In 2018, GRA will collaborate with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development to support the MMDAs in the assessment and collection of property taxes for citizens, especially the poor and the vulnerable. As such, Mr. Speaker, some tax handles have to be maintained in the short term as we make efforts to improve compliance. In this regard, the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy and the Special Import Levy will be extended to the end 2019. Financial sector initiatives. Mr. Speaker, a strong and an efficient financial sector is fundamental to realizing Ghana beyond aid. This requires innovative and long-term financing instruments to support economic development for higher productivity, jobs, and inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, to achieve this, Ghana will design the requisite financial architecture that is capable of mobilizing resources to help rapidly advance our country's development through the following. Mr. Speaker, we will launch a national development bank with the capacity to mobilize private capital towards agriculture and industrial transformation, among others. Government has set up a task force to develop a roadmap for its establishment. The expectation, Mr. Speaker, is to capitalize it with $500 million. Mr. Speaker, we will restructure the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, GIF, with the capability to mobilize foreign private capital for critical infrastructure development using a private sector model. Mr. Speaker, we intend to enhance the capacity of the Ghana Exim Bank Mr. Speaker, is heavily dominated by banks. Total banking sector assets to GDP ratio as of September is 50%. This is whilst that of the stock exchange to GDP ratio is 30%. Total corporate debt to GDP ratio is 36%. Mr. Speaker, all of this has to change to create a vibrant financial services sector to support our industrialization. Mr. Speaker, in effect, though, access to long-term funds by the private sector is not sufficient to drive accelerated economic growth of the country. To address this challenge, government will strengthen the pensions, insurance, and securities industries, which are the key agents of providing long-term capital for the economy. Mr. Speaker, the following specific reforms will aim to address some of these challenges in 2018. National pensions, insurance, and securities industry reform. Initiate reforms to the investment guidelines of pensions, insurance, and collective investment schemes to enable them support. This reform will encourage participation of fixed income securities to the capital market into Additionally, pensions and insurance firms will be encouraged to invest in private equity, real estate investment trusts, etc. National Informal Sector Pension Scheme. Mr. Speaker, the Cocoa Board Law 1984, Section 26, enjoined the Board of Directors of the Ghana Cocoa Board to establish a contributory pension scheme for the nation's cocoa, coffee, and shea nut farmers. In this regard, government has started a process of setting up a broader informal sector pension scheme under the third tier of the National Pension Scheme to cover cocoa farmers, amongst others. The framework to operationalize the scheme will be developed in 2018. Mr. Speaker, this scheme will complement the effort of private sector corporate trustees to provide social protection for a large segment of Ghanaians who are in the informal sector, especially our hard-working cocoa farmers. establishment of an agriculture commodities exchange. Mr. Speaker, work on setting up the Ghana Commodity Exchange and warehouse receipt system has been ongoing for a decade. The exchange is expected to enable easy access to markets, fair pricing for smallholder farmers, and formalize informal agriculture trading activities. Government's priority is to operationalize the commodity exchange in 2018 to support agricultural transformation, including the planting for food and jobs. Mr. Speaker, development of housing and mortgage finance industry. Mr. Speaker, developing a vibrant mortgage and housing finance market is key for social equity and economic development and job creation. To support private sector efforts in expanding access to housing, the Ministry of Finance will partner with banks, pension trustees, and securities market players to start a process of developing and deepening the local mortgage and housing finance market to offer affordable mortgages at subsidized interest rate beginning of public sector workers. The policy objective is to reduce the cost of local currency mortgages offered by banks and to encourage the use of technology to lower the cost of housing by the private sector. This is expected to contribute to the reduction of Ghana's housing deficits, which currently stands at 1.7 million. Positioning Ghana as a regional financial services hub. Over the past decades, Ghana has positioned itself as a pillar of stability in the sub-region, with relatively strong institutions and entrenched democracy. Government intends to capitalize on the success by positioning Ghana as a regional financial services hub. Mr. Speaker, positioning Ghana as an international financial services center is intended to make Ghana the preferred headquarters for all international banks operating in the sub-region and in Africa. Ghana also becoming the hub for the financial technology and payment systems for the region. The hub is also intended to host the international private equity and venture capital firms to support entrepreneurship and access to long-term capital by the private sector in the sub-region. Mr. Speaker, a special task force will be set up to provide government with a strategy and framework for the establishment of Ghana as a regional financial services hub. Mr. Speaker, provision of health services is essential for a productive economy. The National Health Insurance Scheme exists to ensure that citizens obtain quality health care at all times. Mental health is also of paramount importance to government. Studies have indicated that the current revenue sources do not guarantee the sustainability of the fund, given that enrollment to the scheme has increased over the years. To ensure sustainability of the scheme, there's the need to review the sources of funding to increase the revenue flow into the fund. We will consult the relevant stakeholders and make proposals based on such consultations. Voluntary Education Fund. Mr. Speaker, with the successful launch of free SHS, government has received proposals from the public, several of which encourage the establishment of a fund to receive voluntary contribution to support education. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, the GET Fund law allows for the setting up of other education-related funds. In 2018, the Ministry will work with GET Fund to set up these education funds to enable Ghanaians make voluntary contributions to support educational institutions and also facilitate stakeholder ownerships in strong senior high school institutions. Promoting economic opportunities for women. Mr. Speaker, empowering women and achieving gender equality is fundamental to the realization of our SDG goals. The President is committed to empowering women and creating opportunities for their participation in the job and wealth creation agenda. In order to promote economic opportunities for women, special consideration will be given to women in government procurement. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we have very good reasons to be optimistic about our country again. Government has shown and will continue to demonstrate through its actions that the welfare of the Ghanaian is paramount. Plans to restore and sustain faith with Ghanaians and external partners. This is evident in our decision to complete the IMF ECF program at the end of December 2018, and will ensure that all targets are met. Mr. Speaker, we would like to assure Ghanaians that the government of President Nana Akufo-Addo is a government which delivers on its promises. Mr. Speaker, we would like to assure Ghanaians that the government of President Nana Akufo-Addo delivers on its promises. We promised to implement a free senior high school policy, and we have delivered. We promised to restore nursing training allowances, and we have. We promised to restore teacher training allowances, and we have. We promised to end doomsday, and we have. We promise to reduce fertilizer prices by 50%. And we have delivered. We promise, Mr. Speaker, to establish a Ministry of Zongo and Inner City Affairs, and we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, we promise to increase and pay peacekeeping allowances, increase from $31 to $35, and we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, we promise a stimulus package to support local industry, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, we promise to implement a national entrepreneurship and innovation plan, and we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, we promise a more efficient port system, and we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, we promise to reduce the rapid rate of borrowing and accumulation. Mr. Speaker, we promise to reduce Mr. Speaker, we promise to restore economic growth, and we have delivered. We promise to reduce interest rates, and we have delivered. We promise to improve Ghana's sovereign credit rating, and we have delivered. We promise to enhance fiscal discipline in the management of our economy, and we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we promise, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, honorable members.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, order.
Mr. Speaker, we promise to reduce taxes. And we have delivered. Mr. Speaker, we promise to stay current on its statutory obligations like NHIS, DACF, Get Funds, SNIT, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, we promise a national digital property address system, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
order.
We promise to institute measures to deal with corruption, including the Office of Special Cooperation. Mr. Speaker, including the Office of Special Prosecutor, and they have delivered. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we promise to issue national ID cards, and we are delivering. We promise to establish a Zongo Development Fund, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, we promise to establish 3 development authorities: Northern, Middle Belt, and Coastal, and they have delivered. As vehicles for the allocation of the 1 million per constituency, and we intend to deliver this year. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Honorable members who are getting on their feet. Honorable. Don't get on your feet. Honorable members, it is most unparliamentary for me to see members on their feet in that manner. We are going to have your say.
Mrs.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. In Parliament, one person will stand at a time. The person who stands in the meantime is the Honorable Minister for Finance. Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we promised to revive the collapsed railway sector, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, we promise. Mr. Speaker, we promise to reduce electricity tariffs, and we are on course to deliver. Mr. Speaker, we promise to implement a strategy to curb the menace of Galamsey, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, we promise to pursue policies that will create jobs in the economy, and we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, we have fulfilled our promises. Mr. Speaker, in my debut appearance in this august house, my backbencher friends across the aisle traded Bible quotations with me. As I invoked the miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread, Matthew 13, they responded, Mr. Speaker, with Philippians 4:19, that my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. 4:19. Mr. Speaker, with the little, Mr. Speaker, with the little we inherited from the Mahama government, our performance these 10 months are indeed nothing less. Mr. Speaker, with the little we inherited from the Mahama government, our performance these 10 months are indeed nothing less than a miracle. Nothing less than a miracle. As evidenced by the blessings and achievements I've just enumerated. I can only add, Mr. Speaker, that the combination of Philippians 4:19 and Matthew 13, hard work and obedience, have greatly benefited our dear country. Mr. Speaker, going forward, as I mentioned, this budget is about putting Ghana back to work.